folks, and welcome back to the Hilltop Pillbox here in Abbotsford, British Columbia, Canada. And today we are going to be doing a solo game of A&A Pacific. This is the one that came out about 20 years ago and has a bit of a cult following. I know it's not as popular as some of the other versions, especially Global 40 or the anniversary editions, but this has some amazing gameplay features in its own right, and I'll go over a few of those right now. But while in most Axis and Allies games the goal is to defeat your enemy, in this game the Japanese, there's really no way that they can compete. Their economy will get up into the 30s, the low 40s, and then it'll start to disintegrate as time goes on if the Allies play wisely. And America's making 75. And America actually starts with a decent amount of stuff on the board. All right, so they can cause quite a bit of grief for Japan. And Japan has enough troubles of its own. It's got a China here that's going to be healthy for the first couple of rounds. It's going to put on 6 infantry and can probably end up putting on more than that as time goes on. And Calcutta can build as much as it has in money. A lot of the money in this game is convoyed. Alright, you can see there's a 4, there's a 3, and there's a 5 for a total 12. So 12 bucks, and that can either go to India or it can go to Australia, ostensibly the Anzac forces. And so as the allied player you can decide who needs it more. Okay, so Japan really doesn't have a chance to compete economically in this game. Got to turn down the music a little bit. You may recognize it as from Saving Private Ryan, which I realize is not the correct theater, but hey, we're going to go for it anyway. And as I was saying, Japan cannot compete economically, and over the long haul, even if they took over all of Asia and took over all these money islands, they're still not making what America is going to be making. Okay, so America starts at 75. They're obviously going to lose the Philippines in pretty short order, but after that it's pretty tough to get into the American stuff. There's a convoy here for 10 and a convoy here for 5, but Japan's got bigger fish to fry than that, and they would likely lose 20 to 50 bucks worth of stuff trying to stop the Americans from collecting 5 or 10. So this is a numbers game, and so Japan, what they're just trying to do is hang on long enough to gain 22 victory points. So you can see there's the roundel, and it's going to travel down on the track this way and get to 22, hopefully. If they can get to 22, they win, even if they're down to just having 10 bucks worth of stuff on the board. They will still win the game, because at the end of each Japanese turn they will look at what they have in IPCs and then turn that into points. So they'll divide by 10 and turn that into victory points. So in the first round they start with 19, and they obviously will collect some, and they really want to get to 30 on the first round. So that means they need to get 11 bucks worth of stuff. Now, as you can see, it's very red here. This is all Japanese stuff. Any attack they want to do here, like if they wanted to focus fire, there's nothing the Allies could do. But the Japanese are being forced to take risks. They're being forced to do things that they might not normally do. Alright? But they've got to go get 11 bucks worth of stuff. Now, they already have Siam. So Hong Kong, that's worth 2. They'll want to take that. So that's 2. Then they need more. They need 9 more. Philippines is 3. Well, now they need 6 more. Well, they might be able to come down here and take Malaya for 4. And then they need 2 more. And then they could take one of these. And that would fulfill and get them up to 31, 32 bucks. In which case they would get 3 victory points. So this would slide up to the 3. Alright? And then the next turn, they want to hold on to what they got and get 10 more and get up into the 40s. I don't know if I've ever seen Japan get over 50. I don't think I have. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I I think if they're up around 50, they're collecting 5 points in one turn, and that's after they've already collected 3 and 4 probably. That means the Allies are probably done for. But who knows? They might have done it on a real shoestring, and maybe that shoestring is about to snap. Couple of neat things about this game. I mentioned the convoys already, and the kamikaze. You can see that there's kamikaze here, and they have 6, and they are used. It's an abstract thing. They don't need to actually give up a fighter, but they're used in any one of these zones that has the kamikaze symbol on it. Okay, so 23 and 24, 25, and then 36, 35, and 37 all have a kamikaze symbol on them, so they can use them there. All right. And neat little thing here, the Americans do have Marines. You can see one there. You can see there on Wake and on Guam. They just fight a little bit better with amphibious assaults and whatnot. Of course, we've got the Flying Tigers in China. And yeah. So the Japanese can go and push towards Calcutta. And they have lots of transports. They have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 transports. So they can move 24 objects around, and that really changes the board. Or it really could change the board in one swift move. And there's nothing anybody can really do to stop them, because they get to go first, and they have got the firepower to sink everything you see here that isn't red and take over most of these islands without too much trouble. Now the Brits do have a battleship and a carrier with a fighter here. They're going to lose this battleship and destroyer at the start, and they typically lose this destroyer and transport at the start. And Japan is willing to trade because, you know, if you want to build a transport as the Brits to move things around, that's 8, and destroyers are 12 in this game. Okay. Now destroyers, they attack at a 3, defend at a 3, so they're worth a little bit more, kind of like a cruiser in the new versions. But for every destroyer that Japan can sink, you know, the poor, you know, if it's FEC, $12 is all they make, right? So if they can take care of that, that's going to be their whole economy to try to get one back, knowing, of course, that they're probably going to lose Hong Kong worth 2 and Borneo worth 3. All right, so it's important to know that there's this is a much more of an economic game. The Japanese just are never going to have much left on the board at the end of this game. I've never seen them do really, really well at the end of the game. I think that's pretty much it that I wanted to talk about here. And so we're going to get going here. We'll see how Japan does on round 1 of Axis and Allies Pacific from about 20 years ago. Alright, this is after the first round, and I know you probably can't count things up because stuff's too far away. The Japanese lost nothing in the water, and they lost, actually they lost 1 sub, I'll talk about that later, but they lost, the only place they lost men or ground units was up here, because as we remember the Chinese defend at full defense value of 2, but on the first round, everybody else, all their units, they all defend on a roll of 1. So the Japanese essentially want to attack everywhere they possibly can on the first round because the defense is so weak. Because it's a big sneak attack, right? They just poured it on. It's pretty historically accurate. People were, you know, as they always say, the next war is never fought like the last one, but some people in charge didn't quite get that into their heads. And, you know, places like the Philippines and Malaya and whatnot, they fell. I mean, it took a while in some cases, but air power came into its own during World War II, as we all know. So the Japanese, with their monstrous air and naval power, just come around and they just clobber everything. And you want to attack everything that you possibly can. Not to be foolhardy, because you know those ones do pop up every now and again, but in this case, the Allies hit nothing. Nothing died for the Japanese. except up here in China. We had 6 guys here. The 2 Chinese infantry killed 4 Japanese infantry. Just could not get any rolls at all with the Japanese for the first couple of rounds. And so yeah, 4 of the Japanese infantry were killed. So that's going to stunt their movement there. One other thing I want to bring up before I finish round 1 is on the industrial complexes, the ones that start in the game, you can build as much as you want. Okay, you can build, doesn't matter, there's no limit. And the only country that can build industrial centers is, of course, the United States. Okay, but when they build them, they're limited to the number of the IPC values. So if America comes over and gets the Philippines back and want to build a factory there, which they tend to do actually, they can build 3 units there. Okay. Now, Hawaii is here and it's worth 2. But they can still build 10 units there if they want to. Now, some people think that breaks the game. In my mind, it really doesn't. And what it does is it does help promote the idea that the American economy was this unstoppable force. And also, if the Japanese are laying waste over here and collecting a whole bunch of points, if the Americans have to start here, it's going to take them an extra turn to get out here, and by then Japan will definitely have won. So I'm sure they play tested this. We've played this game quite a bit, and it's I think Japan wins a little bit more often than they lose, but not much. Probably like a 60-40 split. So yeah, so I just wanted to point out that. And also the convoys. Okay, I talked about these convoys, I believe, but I don't think I talked about these convoys. So these are convoy centers. So if they bring a battleship and they do that, then the $12 that the British make, they're there and there, or the Americans 15 there and there, just gets taken down off of their economy. It's like most other games. But if we go here, the Japanese go here, but they don't actually take Sumatra, then this $3 actually disappears from the game until this boat goes away or the Japanese take it. So if the Japanese take it, they'll make that $3. But essentially by placing a warship here or a submarine, that stops that money from actually going anywhere. So it's gone from the game. Right? But if they move on, or if this gets sunk and the British still hold it, then that $3 will come back in. All right? Hopefully that makes sense. That's just another way the Japanese can try to bite into the Allied infrastructure a bit without actually having to take all the islands, right? So they can just build up a nice big navy and blockade everything, but they need these points desperately. They desperately want to take these on round 2, which they probably should. But we'll see. All right, let me finish up round 1, and I'll tell you how round 2 goes. No, I'll tell you how round 1 went in just a moment. All right, at the end of turn 1, that's what the board looks like. So you can see Japan was able to gain 3 points because Japan got 32 IPCs in the first round. And so that was a jump up of 13. And we'll show you how they did that right now. But we'll look at the map here first. First of all, you can see that America has been cleaned out and everybody's moved to Hawaii and they put their whole build there, because the Japanese just couldn't compete with that for a couple of turns. And so I built a bomber and a couple battleships and a destroyer here with their $75, and then moved everybody out. We've got 3 fighter squadrons on Midway. So the point of that is just to have a reach out, and in case there's a lone Japanese transport, yeah, it can get sniped by the Americans. So, Japan, the success that they had in the first round is pretty simple. They got 2. That's 6, 9, 12, 13. And that's what Japan really has to do on the first round. Now, you can go after different islands if you want, but I think these are the ones that you can get to, and the other ones are protected from screening forces. So that's essentially what Japan had to do to take these islands. The British have to do something to basically make the Japanese spend money. And the only way you can make Japan spend money that it doesn't want to spend is by wrecking expensive things. And so the key to that in this game is to get as much of your navy together as possible in one place. Now this is everything that survived for the Indian Navy, except for transport down here, which I didn't want to leave there because I'm going to clobber that. But they've got the carriers defended a 3. There's 2 4s, 3 4s, and another 3 and another 2, and these guys defended a 1. Transports actually have a defense in this game. So there's a little bit of kickback there. So when Japan comes down here to clobber this, it's probably going to cost Japan a couple of boats and maybe a plane or 2. That is a success to the British, because then the Japanese need to spend money to replace those things, because of course this is going to just move over, right? It's just going to move over and take the Philippines. And if Japan, if Japan lets this wander around, okay, but then this will go out and take out smaller forces. Like if it were Britain's turn right now, this would take that out in a heartbeat, right? Because that, the carriers, they're not cheap. They're $18, and the planes are $12 a piece in this one, right? So that's 24. That's $42 plus the transport, and transports, that's $50 right there. And Japan made 32 this last round, and I doubt they'll ever make 50 in one round. They could. It's possible, but unlikely. And so that's more than a whole round's worth of purchase just sitting there that this fleet could kill quite easily. And that's what you want Japan to do, is to replace planes and boats. Japan cannot build any units on the mainland until they take Calcutta or Szechuan. Szechuan is where the Chinese infantry have to go. So this last turn they got 3 infantry because they had Sikang, worth 1, Szechuan worth 1, and they had the Burma Road at the start of their turn, but they didn't have it now. Now we cut them a little slack in this game. Now this is something it's a house rule. We let them have their money, as it were. China doesn't use money, but we essentially say at the start of every game China gets 3 infantry. By the rules, you're not supposed to count how many infantry they're going to get until the start of their turn, which they would get 2, because they have 1 here, 1 here. And these mean 1 infantry, 2 infantry, and the Burma Road is a 3rd infantry that they would have. But because we do it this way, we let them have that 3rd infantry because they're immediately down to 2. And if they start the game with 2, probably not a deal breaker, but we say everybody else gets their money to start the game. China should get money to start the game, as it were. But now China, if it loses Szechuan, then the Japanese can actually build an infantry here every turn. Okay, you build 1 unit there every turn. And now that's kind of on the doorstep of Calcutta. Now remember, nobody can build industrial complexes except for the Americans, and they can only build them on their territory, and they can only build up to the number of units that territory has. So sure, they could go build on Wake, but can't build anything. So it's kind of a waste of money. And industrial complexes in this game, I just forgot how much they are. They're $15. Okay, so it's $15 they would have to spend, and it always goes here for the Americans. Okay, just all the time. Yeah, that's pretty much it for round 1. Just the big old Japanese sphere of influence you can see, right? Goes all the way around here. It's just like the real war. And they're making some inroads into Japan, or into China, pardon me. But we'll see. They're stretched thinly already. So we'll see. We'll see how they do. But when they don't take any hits in the first round out here, yeah, they do quite well. Again, China made them pay up there, but we'll see if that has any big effect. Down here, the Anzac built everything in New South Wales, of course, but basically built men and artillery, and then just marshaled up the fleet, looking for a place to maybe go out and reinforce, or maybe take something back. And that's the fear of Japan. Is sure they get the points, and they can never lose these points. but they need to stay above 30 for at least 3-4 rounds if they want to even have a hope, right? And they need to get to 40 this round. So if they get to 40 this round, they'll be up to 7 victory points, and then they need to get 15, and that means staying up, hopefully staying up over 4 for 1-2 rounds, and then 3 for about 2 or 3 rounds, and then it'll be down to 2, and then they just got to try to hold on. Remember, they need at least 10 IPCs in order to make a point, right? So if they ever fall below 10 IPCs, that's the game. Okay, if they ever get to 9 or less, that's pretty much the game. Not officially, but if they don't make any points one round, then it's unlikely they'll make any the next round. All right. Well, we'll see what happens on round 2 here of Axis and Allies Pacific, the old school version. See if this big behemoth of an American presence can come on out and cause some grief to the Imperial Japanese Navy and Army and Air Force. Alright, a pretty good round 2 for Japan. As you can see, they're up to 7 victory points after getting 41. And of special note, they were able to take out Szechuan, so the Chinese are unable to put any units on the board until Szechuan is liberated, and that's just not going to happen here. I tried a tactic as the Japanese to take out Szechuan, but that also allowed these guys here to get pretty big, so this might backfire on me as Japan, but we'll see. Right now there's only 4 Chinese troops on the board. They'll be mopped up next round, no doubt. I moved them further north just to cause the minorest bit of grief for the Japanese time-wise, because that'll just take them longer to get them to where they can start making money again. Down here, just hopped into the Shan State for a freebie, and that's pretty much it. There's not much else that went on here. The Japanese did attack into, I think it was Hope, I think there was, and I think there was like one guy in there, and the Japanese attacked with 2 planes and 2 men, and got no hits on the first 2 rounds, but took 2 hits, and so they ended up having to lose 2 men and then retreated. So that was unfortunate for the Japanese, but yeah, Szechuan fell, and they lost, I think they ended up losing 3 men or something. That's about it. And they did lose a fighter to the AA. They brought in 6 fighters and a bomber, and they lost 1 fighter to the AA. So it's right about on par. Down south, we see Sumatra was taken, and we also see that Java was taken, and that British fleet that used to be there is no longer there. There's a lone transport kind of just trying to stay away from things and cause the Japanese a little bit of grief. I don't know how much that's really going to work. I want to call them Anzac, but they're called Australia in this game. I built a carrier for them so that they could project their power a little bit more easily. I don't know if you notice here on Queensland or any of these places here, there's absolutely no air bases for them out of Australia. So now air bases work a little differently, because what they do is they eliminate the need. It's kind of like a +1, but it's whether you're flying to it or flying away from it that you get your +1. So if it's got an air base here and you're flying from, say, Midway doesn't have an air base, which is kind of weird, but so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Now in most games you'd need that 5th one, but in this game you just slide on in there. All right. Naval bases work a little differently. Typically they give you the +1 movement in most games. They do in this game as well, but only in non-combat moves. And it only works if you're leaving from a port, a naval base, and going to a place that has a naval base. So believe me, under here, this is the New Britain. There's a naval base marker in there. So the Americans were able to come this way. Another thing about this game is that subs actually block convoy zones. Alright, so I built a couple of subs with Japan here, hoping to block some convoy zones. It didn't have quite enough to block the Americans from getting here one way or another, because they could go here, here, here. They go here, here, here. It was just Japan would just have lost a bunch of stuff to no real effort there. So, but now the Americans are within one turn of Philippines, and this is their goal. This is the American goal, because if they can get here and force plant a factory, then they start churning out 3 units each turn from there. I mean, they could build 3 battleships and away you go, right? So, Japan really, was fortunate to get their points. They want to get 40 points again this turn, and they will, because nothing was taken from them, and nothing really can be taken from them, because they get to go first. All right, so they did take the Dutch New Guinea here for the 1, and killed a couple things. And everything that I did here for Japan was trying to kill units of essentially the British, because when you kill units of the British, like these guys here are never going to take anything back. Their whole idea is to stop Japan from getting those $5 and the pittance they'd get if they actually did capture it. Same with these guys down here, They're stuck here until they can get these things rolling, right? And even then, they can only move 2 at a time. So it's at least 2 turns to get over to here. And they have to work in concert with the Americans. That's pretty much the only way you can do it. So now the Americans kind of have to babysit these guys. So they're going to move up there. And if America leaves, then... So it's... I love this game. I love this game because it's just not, yeah, go kill Japan. Because there's no doubt that America, who's able to build 3 battleships on a single turn, deep in enemy territory, there's no way Japan can compete against that. They just simply cannot compete. But if they can hold on, that's the fun of the game. I love this game. Transports, I don't know if I mentioned this before, also defend with a die roll of 1, and they don't need to be the last casualties. So if you've got transports and you got nothing to transport, hey, it's kind of like cannon fodder for you. At $8 a piece, it's not cheap, but there you have it. All right, so not much else here. The Americans again built everything here, and there's no Japanese transports up here, nor would there be, because there's not much reason for it. I do know some fellows who like to come over here and take Hawaii on the first round, or probably the second round, but just go hammer everything American. They just do everything. So they kill out the fleet. They kill out the fleet as best they can, and then then they hightail it. But I don't know. This here has never been a real attractive thing for me. Although it does keep the Americans back out of the game for an extra round or 2, because they have to then come take it and then build there. So they're over here pretty quickly this time, and they're not within range of anything disastrous, because once again you have to go from a port to a port, and it's only on non-com, right? So that's the one thing you gotta get straight, because these games here, they really there's so many overlapping rules and differing rules here and there. You really gotta keep things straight. So, but so far Japan's followed her war aims, and now we're gonna see if the Americans are gonna be able to put a huge dent into that, or if the Japanese will carry on carrying on. Here on round 3, Axis and Allies Pacific. Alright, round 3 is done, and Japan once again is over 40, which is where they really want to be. But trouble's a-coming in the form of the mighty U.S. Navy. So Japan had put a blocker up here, of course. They put a bunch of blockers, and they came in and killed it, of course. And they had a couple battleships, so not going to ever take damage with one blocker. But the U.S. Navy is here, a Japanese Navy is here, but there's also a decent Japanese Navy here, and of course the Japanese still have Navy here. It's all within range of the Philippines. So the Philippines is the key to this whole thing, but we're just going to show you that China is out of the game now, and they will not get back in unless Sichuan is taken, which is highly unlikely. America flew everything down to here. Lots and lots of power here. The Aussies came up here, planted their stuff, and decided to build a Halifax bomber just so that they can reach out and touch someone if they need to. These are the fleets that are represented, of course, by the little tokens. You can see that the Americans definitely have a larger fleet there. Plus, they've got another little one here coming over, plus they've got a battleship and a couple of subs there. So the Japanese do have an inferior fleet next to them, but they also got this, and they've got a lot of air power, bombers within range. So I think I'm probably going to do an attack here, see if we can't clobber that whole thing. If we don't clobber it, if we don't win, the Philippines is still very well defended, and they can still bring lots of stuff down. We got 4 transports. They can bring all 8 units down here and hold the Philippines indefinitely, because the Americans just don't have a lot of stuff to land. Granted, they do have some planes that they could sacrifice, but yeah, that gets pretty pricey as well. So that's pretty much it. India bulked up, built another 6 men there, 5 men, I think. Or no, we built tanks this turn. That's what we built. And so they're raring to go. They built 3 tanks, and so they're going to start pushing in here. But Japan still has a lot of stuff as well. But we'll see if Japan has to fight here and here. We'll see. But again, they have 11 points. They've already got half their points on 3 turns. So holding out for another 11 points over the next 4 or 5 turns, totally doable. The Allies definitely got to get going, but if Japan can knock this thing out, that might win Japan the game, actually. I don't like deciding things quite so early, but if the Americans lose their ability to move troops quickly, they've only got 1 transport here, got a couple here, that's not enough to counter what Japan is building, though. And to get into the money islands here, almost impossible. The next thing I'm thinking of doing is maybe starting to build some naval units here, but they're only making $6, and even if they take all 12 from the convoy, that's only 18. Well, you got to build a destroyer at least to protect transports. That's 12, and you still can't afford the transport. So, all these decisions to make. This is what makes this just an amazing game. I just love this game. So, anyway, we'll see what happens on turn 4. Japan's rolling, but here come the good guys. Alright, the round is over, and a lot happened this round. As you can see, we're no longer needing to use the fleet markers. Yeah. So, long story short, Japan came in to here to crush the American fleet, which they did, but they really took a beating doing it. And then the follow-up with some aircraft. They had their 4 bombers and 3 fighters here in New Britain. They sortied out, sank the rest of the Japanese fleet. They lost their planes doing it. But the Japanese now are down to 2 transports, which is still a minor threat, and couple of subs, couple of destroyers. Everything else is air power, which they do have a lot of. But we'll see. They also got 4 points again last turn, and they're going to get 4 again this turn. So I think the Allies are going to have trouble getting rid of the Japanese, knocking them down. Because if they get 4 this turn, then they only need 3 more to win the game. And when they're making $40, not looking too good. But there was a minor victory here in China. The Allies went and took Yunnan, and they just need to take Sichuan in order to liberate it for the Chinese. But I think got to attack those tanks. They only defended a 2 in this game. They're only $5, but little weak on the defense. And what I thought I would do is the Allies, just to hopefully spread out the Japanese air power a little bit. If I put all the transports in one spot, they just come in and crush them, and that would be that. But when they're dotted all over the place, sometimes they'll have to send just 1 plane. And with the transports defending at a 1, you never know. It's 16.7% chance of knocking a bomber or a fighter out of the air. It's a fun trade. So we'll see what happens. This music, I believe, is called "Safe Now" from Captain Phillips, which happened about over here. If you haven't seen that, highly recommend that movie. That's a good one. Tom Hanks, I love those true stories. Well done. But anyway, we're going to do the next round here, and I know Japan will collect another 4, so unless the Allies can get in here and scoop up a bunch of islands and knock them down to 2, and then maybe knock them down to 1 the next round, but even then, I think that's going to be a victory. So the writing's on the wall here, I think, but who knows? The dice still have to speak, and sometimes the dice will favor the underdog quite heavily. So we'll see what happens here on the next round of Axis and Allies Pacific. Well, if you recognize the music, it's from the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, and that's why I'm on New Zealand now. Just a little homage to the probably one of my favorite movie franchises of all time. It's one of my favorite books too. Well, series of books, I guess you could say. But yeah, the the Hobbits did not do well in this one. They were unable to take out enough Japanese stuff in time. So they did. The Americans did succeed in taking back the Philippines, which is nice. But the Japanese, I thought it'd be a good idea to bulk up these islands here because these are worth 5, right? This is only worth 3, and although the Americans can build on it, these ones here were in no danger of falling this round because they just couldn't get the stuff over there in time. If we look here, the Japanese still have some decent destroyers left, but their air force really got annihilated on this one. They did take back this, and but there was no reason for the British to attack. So I built a bomber for the British up there, and I built a bomber down here, hoping to reach out and maybe do a can opener move for the Americans, and which we actually did here. We were able to do that, kill the sub, and then the Americans came through to take the Philippines. Lost only 3 or 4 units doing it too, so like 3 ground units, of course, because you got 2 transports, but can't remember, the battles all blend together. But essentially the Japanese are going to get at least 3 points this turn. In fact, they're going to get 3. They won't be able to get 4 because they don't have a merchant fleet left, but that'll put them up to 22. So recap of this game. Oh, turn that down. The recap of this game, I think the takeaway is the Allies have got to move faster. If the Japanese collect 4 points on 3 turns, yeesh, you're in trouble. You're in a lot of trouble. If they collect 3 on the first round, which is the goal. If you play Japan on this, you got to collect 3 on the first round. Not only does it give you some extra coinage, it gets you off to a quick start. And if you're collecting 3, that means you collected over $30, which means you're putting over $30 worth of stuff onto the board, which far exceeds essentially what the Allies can put in immediately. The Americans, of course, with their 72, because they'll have 75, but they lose this. With their 72, it takes them, as we've seen, it takes a while to get over here. I did make a mistake putting the American fleet here. I honestly thought that it would not be as tempting a target. It looked a lot worse than it was. But when I did the math, the Japanese won that handily. They got taken out by the second wave, of course. But by then, you know, with the Americans losing quite a bit of stuff there. And even keeping transports back, the bombers from here could come over and kill them. And even if you lose some bombers and you wipe out the transport fleet, it's the same thing. You've got troops that are stuck. And again, you can only move 2 spaces in this game during combat movement. Non-com, you can move 3 if you're moving from a friendly port to a friendly port. But it's not like the other games where, you know, hey, I got a port here, I can do 3, so you can go 1, 2, 3, hey, I can take Borneo. No, you can't. You can't go out 3 on combat move, just on non-com. So, Allies, you got to do some real good math, and that's why building here and building everything here is so handy, because it's if the Anzac here can come up here and hang on to New Britain, then they can go 1, 2, 3, and you can start to build a force here. Going here, that was a mistake. But Japanese got some pretty good rolls too, and they just crushed it. So, yeah, so 1 turn too slow, and I left these guys hanging out in the wind here. I left the big American fleet stuck between 2. Did have some counterpunch. We lost our bombers and aircraft, wiping out the rest of the Japanese fleet, but that's a trade Japan's willing to make, right? Because it's all about the victory track. And we didn't even get to use any of the kamikaze because those are only used in the sea zones right up here, and there was no reason to go up there. Yeah. I actually did think, oh, maybe I should send all my transports up north and just try to attack Japan. But Japan at the time was making over 40. They're just going to place 8 and then 8 more. So they're going to have 16 more troops on there and just fly all the aircraft home. And then what do you do, right? That's if the kamikaze don't wipe out your transports, which is something that you can do in this game. I know in some other Axis and Allies variants, you can't kamikaze transports. You have to go after warships, and obviously you can't kamikaze subs, but you can kamikaze transports in this, and that's it's funny, but that tends to be what the Japanese player will target if there's kind of a dearth of transports. So, all right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I know it's a little anticlimactic, we're finishing before we really finish. But Japan's got this well in hand. I think the early successes in China, where they just steamrolled, and China only placed units on 1 round because Szechuan fell on round 2. I think that's a big part of it. If you can free up the Japanese in China, that really puts a hold on this. They're just going to build men because they have to for the first couple rounds, 3 rounds maybe. I know I'd built some tanks because I was focusing on the air and naval with Japan. If they do that, sure, build some tanks, go out. They're going to die, but you can go out and take some things. But as we look over the board here, you can see Japan isn't very strong right now. Got a stack of men, 1 tank. They got 3 planes on the board, and a couple of infantry out here. And who knows if those infantry, if I had left them in the Philippines, that might have been enough, and this guy would be dead. And then the Philippines is still in Japanese hands, right? And then you got to go back to get more guys. So, well, I guess we could go over here. But anyway, yeah, long story short, Allies faster. Japan, focus on your air and naval strength in order to block. And just slow down the Allies at every turn. Build subs, they're cheap, only $8 compared to destroyers, which are 12. Yeah, there you go. All right, well, thanks so much for watching the Axis and Allies Pacific today, folks. Again, this is during the coronavirus thing that's going on, and just stay safe, everybody, and do your bit. I know there's a lot of people out there talking about conspiracy and whatnot, and you know what? Maybe it is. I don't know, but I do know that it's always better to err on the side of caution when you're dealing with things like this, and go out when you have to, not just when you want to, and do what you can, do your part to help us get out of this a little faster. I'm really missing my students, my classes. It's a lot of fun, and hope to get back there before the year's out, but I don't see it happening. Unless it clears up tomorrow, I think we're probably done for the year. Don't quote me on it, but I think it's a pretty safe bet. Well, thanks so much for watching. Take care. Hug your loved ones. Thank your friends for playing with you and just making life a little bit more fun. And as always, may the dice be with you.